Hey everyone, I'm Leif. I'm the founder of Xane and very happy to present Noxtua to you, one of the fastest growing legal language models in the world. We're a spin-off from Oxford University. We were founded in 2017 and mostly try to cross the borders between privacy and AI, especially when it comes to the legal scene. We've been featured a lot everywhere in the news, like especially in Germany, Europe, like Financial Times, FAZ, Handelsblatt, etc. Um, and what is Xane about, and especially Noxtua? We especially try to see or address how we can solve one of the main problems when it comes to AI in law. First of all, traditional language models like GPT have a lot of shortcomings when it comes to the actual quality of the model, especially in very dedicated jurisdictions like, for example, Germany, France, Italy, Japan, when it comes to really answering truthful answers, but also understanding how the legal systems work there, because most of the data in these jurisdictions is not public. So it's very hard to train models in these areas, and you can only do so when you have enough partnerships. The second point is that these jurisdictions often have very, very strict compliance frameworks. For example, in Europe, you have in many countries the professional secrecy amendments that you have to sign, which means that, for example, you can't process data on US clouds or sending data somewhere else where the data is at risk to be sent outside of Europe. But more so, also as a provider of the service, you can never actually anywhere see the data that you process. So everything has to be blind, so to say. And that's of course quite tricky because you need a lot of security around it. You have to prove also that you never see this data. And in Germany, for example, and same also applies to other countries like France, Italy, this is actually regulated under criminal code. So if you actually ever saw the data of your customers, this is not just something with a financial fine or so, but this actually means that this is at least a couple of years in prison for the entire C-level. So how did we solve this problem? Well, we actually trained a dedicated legal language model for Europe and also, of course, extendable to other jurisdictions in the world. We cooperate with multiple different companies here, for example, CMS, which is the largest law firm in Europe with around 7,000 lawyers, but also other legal databases, publishers, and so on. So we together build the Legal AI Alliance, which is kind of like a data room for law, where all of this kind of proprietary data is handled and is collected just in order to train Noxtua as a legal language model. So Noxtua is at the end and in the core developed with lawyers, but especially also for lawyers. And the second thing is that we of course have to apply to, as I mentioned previously, to a lot of regulation here. So we have to actually make sure none of the data is actually ever leaving the country, and therefore we also went into partnerships with companies like Deutsche Telekom, for example, and we run the entire service with confidential compute servers, which means neither Deutsche Telekom nor we can actually see what is processed. We went through a lot of different certifications, around 5 ISO certifications, C5 certification, and so on. So what is Noxtua in essence about? It's mostly 3 factors. We do legal research, so coming up with very precise answers for legal problems, including subsumptioning. We have the ability to draft clauses, draft contracts, but also analyze contracts, which is one of the most powerful features, and I'm also going to show in a second. So we deliver a per head assistant for lawyers and legal departments, but also we allow for others to use Noxtua either via our API or connectors. And for that, we, for example, build a Power Automate connector or Brighter connector. So you can actually, as a legal department, automate entire legal processes in the background, check mass contracts, check basically your entire company for infringements, for example, for risks, etc. And also we have partnered already with a lot of different legal tech providers that actually integrate Noxtua in their products, like for example, ClawSpace. But what is about the actual performance of the model? And here we also see that this is an example of two of our models, Noxtua Voyage, which is a legal search model, and Noxtua LLM. How this specific training on legal data actually allows for outperforming the top models from OpenAI, in this case embedding v3 and GPT-4, for these dedicated tasks. So smaller, more dedicated models actually can still, and even more so nowadays, outperform the best world models, because you actually never see this very proprietary data in these models. And the same holds, of course, for all sorts of other industries like medicine and so on. So we actually focus a lot on this ultra high value data set for training Noxtra, and this data is really of the essence here. So the data set overall is of course much smaller than the data set that, for example, GPT-4 is trained on. However, we have a lot more legal data that these models are trained on. And because we're not so much like influenced by all of the other things that are included in these models, we actually achieve a much better performance. So how do we train it? We actually train with reinforcement learning. So we have a dedicated training environment together with partners where they see different outputs of Noxtura and including also their own outputs. So it's a mix between generated outputs from the model and human written output, but the actual users, the training users, don't ever see which is human and which is generated by the model. They rate it, and thereby we basically go through a lot of different sample reviews, and over time this data has been grown to, like right now, more than 200 billion token data set. So I'll also quickly show you an example of Noxtua. So of course you have all sorts of abilities similar to ChatGPT, but the more interesting feature is that you can actually go through mass reviews of contracts. So let's say you want to go through a DPA check, then you can do so in a matter of a click. So basically what I did is, just using a Microsoft DPA, the model knows exactly what to do here, and it basically goes through an entire DPA in a matter of seconds. And then you can, of course, download this as a report. And what a lot of companies do is that they actually address this as a background process, so it runs all the time. And you can, for example, send all sorts of different contracts there. And then they, of course, get stored somewhere, and for example, SharePoint or whatever. And then you actually automate a lot of the tasks that you have done previously by hand. Yeah, I hope this shows some of the benefits of Noxtua, which I think is pretty impressive and is already helping a lot of different companies, especially in the financial sector, including companies like Allianz, banks, stock exchanges, and so on, which of course sit on thousands of different legal tasks every day. Thanks a lot.